I don't believe that you came today for no reason. I think you came for a purpose. And I believe buried inside of you is the hope that you would learn what God wants you to do with your life. I think we all have this hunger to know, well, what's God's will for me? What does he really want to do with me? And what's he about? And how could my life have a purpose or a meaning? And I think we're on a quest for that to a person, that even the smallest ones in here really want to know, well, do I matter? Does God love me? How can I have a great life? And so we're in the middle of this series called How to Have a Really Rockin' Life, because I think most of us want to have a rockin' life. And we've been looking at the Sermon on the Mount, 3 chapters in the Bible, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, where Jesus unpacks a sermon to tell us about a life that's possible. It seems impossible when you first read it. You're like, there is no way anybody can live that way. There's no way that I could live as a person that forgives my enemies and that turns the other cheek and that does all of these things that God talks about. It just seems like that's impossible to live that way. But it's possible. Jesus is saying it's possible. Now, last week, you may have, if you were here, you may remember that Jesus mentions a word in those 3 chapters 17 times. That's the key word in this passage. It's the key word that unlocks these 3 chapters. Do you remember what the word is? Father. He talks about his Father 17 times. And specifically, he talks about his Father who's in secret, or the Father who's in heaven, and how the Father who's in secret will hear you when you talk to him. And the Father who is in secret will reward you if you'll trust him. And the Father who's in heaven wants to provide for you. And so Jesus has this secret to a really rockin' life that I want to get into with you today. So what is Jesus' secret that's hidden in plain sight in his Sermon on the Mount? There's a secret buried inside of it. The decoder word is Father. Now the secret inside of it is this idea. And the idea is this. This is the secret that's hidden in plain sight in the Sermon on the Mount. That it's possible and desirable even to live as a fully connected child of God. It's possible and desirable to live as a fully connected child of God. It's possible to be so connected to your Father who's in heaven, who sees in secret, who will reward you, that your life could be totally revolutionary. It could be totally different. You know, and Jesus inside of that, he's saying, this God, your Father, is here right now to provide what you need and to provide power, direction, and purpose. He's here to provide everything you need for life and to provide direction and power and purpose in your life. And isn't that what you want most, isn't it? Don't you want to have power and purpose and direction in your life? I certainly do, and I've gone on a quest for that. So the question that you're probably asking is, so why would I want to consider living as a fully connected child of God? Why would I want to consider that? Here's why I think you may want to consider it. Because I think if you will live this way, your life takes on a whole new meaning. Things can happen in your life that are absolutely supernatural. Things that can happen in your life defy the odds. And things happen in your life that are extraordinary. If you will be a person who's fully connected to the Father who's in secret, if you'll live like a fully connected child of God. I've seen it happen. I study leaders and leadership and people that have made a difference, and I've had the privilege of being at a lot of different conferences to learn about those kinds of things. But one of the most powerful moments I ever had at a conference was when a fellow named John Maxwell, who teaches a lot of leadership stuff, was on stage, but he was introducing one of his heroes, who was also one of my heroes. He was introducing the person that started Campus Crusade for Christ. It's an organization that you might know now as Cru, and his name is Bill Bright. And John Maxwell did an elaborate introduction, long introduction about Bill Bright. But then they showed a 10-minute video, maybe 15 minutes, about Bill Bright's life and about Campus Crusade and its impact on the planet, on how many millions of people had heard about Jesus and accepted him as Lord and Savior and began to live lives that were following Jesus. It was absolutely powerful. I was in a room full of pastors, and I don't know if the rest of them felt the way I did, but the more the video went on, the more I felt like, dang, I'm not doing anything. You know what I'm talking about? You ever been by somebody like that that's so big, you feel so small. Like, I'm just not getting anything done. Like, I'm moving backwards. This cat is, God is using him in this amazing way, and I'm just backing up. And so it was totally humbling from that respect, just to realize I'm in this giant is coming to the platform in just a minute. And so the video went on, and then Bill Bright is being brought to stage. At this point in his life, he was near the end of his life. He wasn't supposed to be traveling, but he traveled anyway. He brought a physician with him, and he was wheeled onto stage in a wheelchair with his oxygen mask and tank, and they brought him to stage. And I wish you could have been there in those moments. And this crowd erupted. And for 15 minutes, I kid you not, it was a standing ovation like I've never seen in my life. It was just heaven opened up, and this powerful moment. And this man of God had been used so well, was celebrated so well. And so much so that Bill Bright finally kind of works his way out of his wheelchair and makes it to the podium to hang on. And finally gets us to kind of quiet down. His opening line, and this is the key to a great life. I'm just a servant of Jesus Christ. I'm just a servant of Jesus Christ. In some way, somehow, in Bill Bright's lifetime, he had learned to submit his agenda to God's agenda, his plans to God's plans, and God had used him in a magnificent way. Wouldn't you like your life to amount to something like that? Wouldn't that be cool? I'm under no illusion. I'll never be Bill Bright. But I do believe God can use me even better in the future than he has in the past. Because I'm learning to cooperate more with him. And I think it can be true for you too. That your life can have more meaning, more purpose, and more power than it's ever had. Now, let me give a little commercial break here. Here's the deal. I know not everybody here believes in anything I'm saying. Some of you think it's totally weird and goofy and strange. I would agree with all that. It's weird and goofy and strange. Because it's supernatural, it's spiritual, it's different. It's not what we're used to thinking about. We're used to thinking about, what can I do on my own power? What can I do by myself? How can I pull myself up by my bootstraps and become better? And I've studied all the self-help stuff and the motivation stuff, and I'm good at it, and I got it, and I can teach it and all that, and it's good. But there is nothing like the power of Christ at work in a person's life to change you. You're way better off doing life with God than without God. That's my point. And to come under his power and his authority is the key to real living life. And this is what Jesus is unpacking. Now, again, you can totally disagree with me, and I'm really okay with that. And you can, I'd be glad to just sit and talk and share ideas and see. You may have a better plan. But in my opinion, it seems this is the best plan in the world. To follow this plan that Jesus puts forth in the Sermon on the Mount. Now, this is important. Another reason you may want to consider doing this, doing life God's way and doing the life the way that Jesus suggests, is that Jesus says it's possible to have the appearance of being a good person and of being holy or being a church person or a Christian and still miss it. Matthew 7:21, it says this. Look at this. Jesus speaking, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, "Lord, Lord." Keep in mind who Jesus is speaking to in these passages. Jesus, in the course of this passage, he's talking to ordinary folks. He opens up and says, "Blessed are you if you're kind of ordinary, if you're poor in spirit, that is, that you realize that you've got a need and you've got a hunger." So if you came to worship today and you knew you've got a need and a hunger for Jesus, good for you. You're going to be blessed. He says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, to be made right and to live right." You're going to be blessed. And he goes on through in his teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, he begins to address the religious people that were in the crowd, the scribes and the Pharisees, the ones who got it right, the ones who appeared to have it all together, the ones who dressed the right way, who carried themselves the right way, who prayed loud public prayers to God who's above, and I'm so great, and God, you're so great, and I'm glad that I'm great and not like that person over there, and who prayed big prayers. And for the timid in the crowd and the ones who felt disconnected from God, it was totally intimidating. And this crowd, these scribes and these Pharisees, had grown accustomed to having people see them in a particularly holy light and being set up as special people in the kingdom of God, of special people in the house of God. These were the elite. These were the insiders. And these insiders were telling everybody else that you're outsiders. And Jesus was flipping the tables on them in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, no. Those who think you're in are really out, and those who think you're out, you're really in. It's all about your heart, and it's about how you relate to me. It's not about what you're doing on the outside. You see, religion is what you're doing outside. Jesus elsewhere teaches about cleaning the outside of the cup and not paying any attention to the inside. He said, man, you need to pay attention to the inside of the cup more than the outside. The outside becomes automatically good if you clean the inside. You see, Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, mentions the Father who's in secret over and over again because Jesus is concerned about what you can't see, what's inside of you, more than what you can see on the outside. He's more concerned about your connection to God than he is to your religious performance. And that should be really good news. You don't have to put on a performance. You don't have to put on a show before God. Just live as a fully connected child of God, simply and quietly and powerfully connected to God. Looping back to Bill Bright. Bill Bright, as he went through his talk, he talked about the growth of Campus Crusade, which at that point was over 50 years old, and what God had done in the ministry. And he talked about people wondered about him and said, well, all this is happening in your ministry. Don't you feel this pressure? Bill Bright said, no, I don't feel any pressure because it's always God's. And every day, I just got up and said, God, this is yours. I'm your person. I'll do what you want me to do. And it was that simple. Isn't that profound? Isn't that powerful? Little by little, God did this amazing thing using an ordinary person who just submitted himself to God. That's what Jesus is saying is possible. You can just be an ordinary person, no special talent, no special ability, not particularly good looking or able to speak really well or anything like that. By the way, Bill Bright's talk, as far as his public speaking, pretty vanilla, pretty plain, pretty unimpressive, pretty unpowerful, and yet a very powerful life in its impact. It wasn't a good stage show, but it was a really good way to live life. So Jesus, in this passage, Matthew 7:21, for some of us, this is good news. For some of us, this is bad news. Not everybody that says to me, Lord, Lord, is going to enter the kingdom of heaven. But those who do the will of my Father who's in heaven. So it becomes important to know what the Father's will is then, doesn't it? It's important to know, what is God's will? What does he want me to do? How can I live this connected life? So it's important because Jesus says it's important, but it's important practically that if you want your life to take on the power and purpose plan that it could have, it's going to flow out of connection to God. And Jesus says it's all possible. Now, another objection that probably is going to be popping up about right now. All right, Jeff, appreciate all the spiritual mumbo jumbo. Appreciate all this stuff. I don't have time for all that stuff. I do not have time. I'm a very busy person. I run a business. I got to get up early. I'm into work by 5:30 in the morning, and I'm taking care of lots of employees, and we've got this master plan we're working on, and I'm moving this enterprise down the rails, and it's taking all I got, and I leave before dark, and I get home after dark, and I never see my family, and I don't have time for your spiritual stuff. Others of you, man, you're like, I'm working at Ford. I'm doing all I can do. I go in at 5 o'clock in the evening, and I don't get home till 5 o'clock the next day, and then I try to get a little sleep, and I'm trying to raise a family and try to occasionally see the kids' ball games, and I'm worn out. I don't have time for any of your stuff. Or I'm serving in the military, and man, I'm moving all over the place, and I got all this happening, or I got a new job, and Jeff, you have no idea what the stress is, or I'm raising kids, or for some of you, you're raising grandkids. And by the way, there's a trend in America, and it's very true in this church. It's Grandparents' Day today, by the way. Congratulations, grandparents. Give it up for grandparents. Some of you grandparents are really, really busy because the children have either moved back home or the grandchildren have. How many of you have grandchildren living at your house right now? Raise your hands. Grandchildren living at your house right now. All you guys keep your hands up for a minute. Don't put them down. Keep them up. And I want you all to look around. No, keep your hands up so you can identify each other. Look around. You need to point to each other and say, let's talk after worship. Because you need to talk to each other because you need some support. You are busy. At a time in your life you didn't think you were going to be busy. And now you're busy. And you're back to diapers again, and back to runny noses, and back to teachers that send home homework, not for the kids to do, but for you to do, and stuff like that. And I mean, all this stuff. I mean, Parents, by the way, are you tired of doing homework? I mean, it's like, this obviously is not for the child. It's to see if I can do this or not. And what's woefully sad is there's some days I have to send it back and say, ask your teacher, because I have no idea. And this is fifth grade stuff, you know. I'm like, I got no idea how to do that. I don't know. I only have a degree from the University of Kentucky. I mean, just because of that, I mean, you think I could do fifth grade work, but no, I'm not smart as a fifth grader sometimes. And so we're busy. I mean, life is busy, and you're with your kids, and you're doing athletics, and there are competitions, and you're gone, and you're in and out, and you're traveling, and all this stuff. I mean, I know it's true. I know life is busy. So, in the midst of all that busyness, how on earth could you have time for the spiritual mumbo jumbo? How could you have time for that? The real question is, how could you not have time? Now, let me just share an aside. I do believe that you will find tremendous reserves of power and purpose in your life if you will carve out real time to sit at the feet of Jesus in solitude and silence. I do believe that's true. I've experienced it in my own life, and you will too. If you'll begin to treat your time with God as a divine appointment that must be kept, and it goes this way, you actually put it in your planner, you open up your smartphone or your device, and you drop an appointment in there, and that's your time with God, and you will not violate it. It is as important as meeting with the CEO of your company. Because honestly, I got to tell you, the CEO of your company is going away. But the Father who's in secret is never going away. And He has more to do with your universe than your CEO ever will. Do you understand that? So it would elevate this time with God to a proper place in your life. If you want to experience this fruitful life that Jesus says is possible, then carve out serious, real time to be with the Father who's in secret. Not a big deal. Just grab your Bible, maybe grab a journal, and take some time and get away. Grab a cup of coffee if you want it, and just try to let things go away for a while. Turn the ringers off. Turn off the television. Turn off the stuff that distracts you. And just simply be in the presence of God. Now, this is where you're probably pushing back. I do not have time for that. Okay, I give you that. You don't have time. But I think you'll be blessed. You'll actually see that it doesn't cost you something. It's an investment you make, and you actually get a return on the investment that's more than the time you spent. You'll be more effective in the time you do have left than you would be doing it all by yourself anyway. So you can either live with a little less time that's blessed by God, or you can just go out and try to do life on your own. So here's the real question. This is what I have to ask you. One of my friends asks me sometimes, how's it working out so far, Buzz? How's your plan working out so far? How's you running your own life working out so far? Is it really good? Is it really, man, it's rocking life? Or are you having some train wrecks somewhere along the way? Chances are, if you're just running your own show, your own way, at your own pace, doing your own thing, that you're experiencing some real pain in your life right now. And let me just say this. You can't blame your pain on God when you're not letting God be a part of any of the plan that you're planning for yourself anyway. You can't say, well, it's God's fault. It's just God's will. No, you're just being a moron. Sorry. It's true, isn't it? I mean, sometimes, some things we do is like, we just take the pistol out and we barnify ourselves right in the foot. Just blow it right off. And it's like, right, there we go. I had one bullet and I blew it right through my foot. And it's just how we do life sometimes. We try to do it on our own. And the more you do life on your own, the more pain you're going to have. Because you continue to think, well, I'm just going to do it this way. This is what I think is right. The Scriptures teach us that there's a way that seems right to man that leads to destruction. And then there's God's way. So you can always choose. You can always pick. So solitude and silence puts you in tune with the rhythm of heaven and with the voice of God so you can do His plan in your life. Now, I do know this. Most of you don't have 3 or 4 hours a week or 2 or 3 hours a day, and I know there's spiritual giants that do that. Most of you don't have it, and that's a practical reality. I get it. So how do you do life connected to God in the middle of being really, really busy and not having time to have days off to just spend in solitude and silence? How do you do it? How do you do it when you got a brand new job as a state trooper? How do you do this, Steve? You know, it's a big question, right? So you need to know he's a brand new state trooper. He's very busy. He's got a beautiful wife and these little kids. He's busy. So I'm just going to talk to you. Can I pick you and just talk to you for a minute? Because you're busy, and I know that. And you're out there, and you got to arrest bad people like me who speed, stuff like that. Or not arrested. Hopefully don't arrest me, but I maybe get a ticket. But maybe if Julie was in the car, I could get off. I don't know. But the deal is that you're busy and you got stuff to do, and it's most of us are busy. We have stuff to do. So I want to share with you how you could be connected to God in the moment by moment, even of being a police officer. That I would ask you to do something revolutionary. As you're flipping the lights on to pull them over, pray for them. Serious business. Hey, just say, God, I have no idea what's really going on in their life. I probably have to give them a ticket. 87 and a 55 is not a good idea. But I'm still going to pray for them. And you could actually pray for them as you're walking up to the car. And as you're issuing the ticket. And you never have to tell them you're praying for them. You never have to say anything to them. And as you're sitting out there in that cruiser, sometimes you can look around and look for signs of God. And as you see the sun, sometimes it reminds you, oh, sun, light, God. You look for the cross everywhere. In the worship center, it's easy. We put the cross in a very prominent place because we always want to remind you that we're gathered at the feet of Jesus. We're gathered here because of his cross. But what about when you're sitting out in the police cruiser? You look around, look for crosses around you just to remind you of Jesus. Every time there's a telephone pole, nearly every time, at the top of that pole, there's a little wooden bar that goes across. What's it look like? It looks like a cross, doesn't it? And they're all around us. And you can see little T's in a sign just where somebody's written something. Eat at McDonald's, that little AT can remind you that T is the cross. I'm not saying McDonald's is Jesus' idea, but I am saying that it can remind us. All these things around us, they can just remind us when you moms, what about you? You're busy. You got these little children and sometimes you just feel like you're just overwhelmed by the amount of neediness that these children have. What if when you hear the little voice, just do the best you can to know, man, that's the voice of God. And when you look into the face of your children, remember, God sees you as a child too, and just pray to the Father who's in secret. And say, God, I'm really having trouble being patient right now, but could you just help me just to be patient and to love them right this moment? School teachers, man, you got a big job. I'm telling you. It's just unbelievable the amount of work you have and what you're trying to do, and you're trying to change these lives. And I believe you can, but I don't believe you can do it alone. I think your classroom will change if you'll do this one thing. As you look across the classroom, as you see those faces, just pray for them. And simple prayer like, God, I have no idea what's going on in little Susie's life, but I know that you love her. Help me to love her too. And that's simple. And you never have to say it out loud, and you don't have to even post the 10 Commandments. Serious. Just be Christ. Just be Jesus. Just ask, Jesus, what would you do today if you were in my skin? How would you live my life? How would you make this decision? And then connect with God the way Jesus did. And as you go, pray for people. And let God be a part of what you're doing, moment by moment. Paul, who practices very well, wrote most of the New Testament. He said we should pray all the time. We should let God know all of our needs. Jesus says the same thing in the Sermon on the Mount. Let God know all of your needs. He cares for you. He's your Father who's in secret. He loves you. If you, as an earthly parent, know how to give good gifts, God knows how to do it even better, so you can trust him. Isn't that cool? So think about living this connected kind of life. Think about living this way with God. Not alone, not by yourself, but connected to God. I wonder if you would do an experiment with me this week. If you would just take an hour sometime this week and just purposely, during that hour, do the best you can to be connected to God. And there's ways you can do it. When you see a light, remember, think Phos, think light, think God, think Jesus. When you see a cross, thank God for Jesus and his work in your life. When you see another human, just say a simple prayer for them. God, would you bless them? And here's what Jesus is talking about. Someone about, even if they're your enemy, God, would you bless them? Or you could say a prayer like this: God, I really hate them. I really wish they'd get ran over by a truck. But would you help me love them anyway? You can be honest with God. He already knows. He already knows you're thinking that. So just go ahead and tell him, well, God, I really wish they'd get ran over by a truck, but you have to change my heart so I can pray for them the way I need to pray for them. Pray to God about what you need to pray about. But when you see the person, just pray for them. Just talk to God about everything that's going on around you. Frank Laubach, who wrote a book that I'll talk to you about in a minute, he calls this the game with minutes. He said, take an hour of your life, and every minute for that hour, try to think of God some way. And when you do that, just make a little check mark. Just a little check, and try to see how many minutes of that hour you could bring God to your consciousness. You know, this is simple stuff, and it's really not hard. It's not rocket science. It does require some intention. And I'm not trying to add stress to your life. I promise you this will change your life. What you're trying to do by yourself, you're never going to get done anyway. So why don't you try doing life God's way with God instead of alone, away from God? It will change everything. I've seen this happen in my own life. Even though this is a principle I've known about for a long time, it's something I sometimes kind of forget, and I still move over and start doing life on my own. You ever do that? You ever move over, even though you know these things, you move over and start doing life on your own? Then it starts like, this is not working. And I get reminded and move back. And I tried this simple idea of just bringing this God consciousness up in my own life. I tried it of all places in a spin class at the Y a few weeks ago. 5:30 in the morning. We get in there and start getting the bike set up. And my only deal that day was just to pray for the people in the room. And I don't know most of their names. And just to pray for them. Just say, God, would you just bless them? Just bless them. Just bless them. Bless them. Jesus, help this to be over fast because it's killing me. Or what, these things that you go through in this deal. Do you know at the end of that class that this discussion broke out between me and one of the other people in the class? That was one of the most holy, powerful discussions I've ever had in my life. And honestly, if you were going through the class and you picked out the least likely person to have a spiritual discussion with, it would have been this person. Weird, huh? Weird. Praying about a different thing yesterday at a ball game. Caleb was playing up in Henry County. He's playing, and I'm just praying for some people in the room, and I'm trying to get a video of him. And this person comes over and taps me on the shoulder. It was an old friend who probably has the answer to the prayer I was praying about a connection I needed for something to happen in this church. Pretty cool, huh? It's just becoming aware that God is there and he wants to do life with you. He's asking you, please don't do life alone. Do life with me. Invite me into your life moment by moment, decision by decision, discussion by discussion. And just let me do life with you. I hope you'll do that experiment with me this week sometime. I would love to hear about it. If you would, just send me an email, jeff@phoschurch.com, and tell me, hey, this is what I did. This is what I experienced. I believe, this is what I really believe, I believe you'll experience it as being revolutionary. I believe you'll experience something in these times when you just become more God-aware and stop doing it all by yourself, that you'll experience more of the kind of life Jesus is inviting you into. Wouldn't that be awesome? That's my hope. That's my prayer. I want you to have this great, big, wide open life with God. I want you to have an adventure with Jesus. I want you to be so fired up about what he's doing in your life that you can't hold it back. If that happened, that would be just miraculous. You know, Bill Bright's life was amazing. You're not going to be Bill Bright, and I'm not going to be Bill Bright. I mean, we're not called to be. But what if you were just you? And what if by being you, connected to God, God could use you? And God could change you, and God could move you along, and you begin to live by his power and not by your power alone. Imagine what would happen if all of us gathered here today, if we just tried this for an hour a week in the weeks ahead. Do you think it would change some things in this community and around the world? Some of you travel all over the world. You would change things here, there, and everywhere. You see, the real mission movement of Phos Community Church isn't about us going somewhere else to do mission trips. We take you there to train you to do this thing, but our real mission field is right here, right where you work and live every day. So learn to live connected to God, moment by moment. There's some resources I want to talk to you about. They're on your sermon note card, so no need to write them down, but just on your sermon note card at the bottom of them, it gives you more details. The Practice of the Presence of God is a miraculous book that talks about how an ordinary dishwasher who was a monk learned how to practice the presence of God moment by moment just while he's washing dishes. After he was dead, people gathered up his writings and put them into a book. This book has been sold almost more times than almost every book in the world. There's millions and millions and millions of copies over hundreds of years now. This book has been circulated as a primer on how to be connected to God. It's available online for free. You can afford that, right? The URL for it is in your sermon note cards. Letters by a Modern Mystic, The Game with Minutes, is in that by Frank Laubach. Frank Laubach was a missionary in the Philippines who had kind of an okay missionary life until he learned to live connected to God. Once he learned to live connected to God, moment by moment, his missionary endeavors took on a whole new power and meaning, and he began to see God do amazing things in the communities where he served. And more than that, Frank Laubach became used to launch not just a ministry, but a mission, I'm not sure how to even say this, an enterprise that taught millions of people all over the world how to read so they could take in the Word of God. He developed a very practical system of literacy to help people learn to read. God used him in a powerful, practical way to change people's lives. That's pretty amazing. And his story, in Letters of a Modern Mystic, I think you'll find fascinating. And he gives a little bit more about how to play this game with minutes, how to be connected to God minute by minute. The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard. Some of you have been around church for a long time, and you've done a lot of Bible studies and stuff. You need to pick up this book. Dallas Willard will challenge you. He may be the toughest author you're going to read. I'll go ahead and tell you, it won't be easy reading. This is not Grisham fiction. Okay, this is different, right? But is it worth it? It's worth it. It's worth it to dive into this book. A lot of the teaching I'm doing for the Sermon on the Mount series comes directly out of Dallas Willard's work in the Divine Conspiracy. God is Closer Than You Think by John Ortberg. All these books would be powerful for you to study. And again, you're back to, well, I don't have time for all that. Okay, you do what you want. These books, by the way, if you can't read them, you can get them on audio. You can listen to them while you're driving. Most of you drive several hours each week. You could listen to any one of those books, The Divine Conspiracy, God is Closer Than You Think. You listen to them in a couple of weeks just in your car driving around. So there's all kinds of ways of getting this into your system. Make sense? So hope you'll join me. Hope you'll do this experiment. Hope you'll see what life connected with God could be like. Because that's Jesus' secret that's hidden in plain sight in the Sermon on the Mount. That it's possible and it's even desirable to live as a fully connected child of God.